What's up, Canna Expo? Let me hear ya. Yeah, holler for terpenes. If you like terps, come up here, get terpy with me, talk terpy to me. We'll be here all day long talking terpy, terping out, nerding out. My name's Randy Reed. I am the Chief Slushy Officer over there at the Slushy booth. Also a Chief Scientist at High Level Coffee, founder of a consulting group called R&S Consulting, where we do flavor and formulation consulting specific for the cannabis and hemp industry. Again, Chief Slushy Officer at the Chill Bar, and VP of Scientific Solutions at Advanced Vapor Devices. We are a cannabis-specific hardware manufacturer, so vape carts, 510 batteries, and that sort of deal. I'm the VP Science there. So we love terpenes. Terpenes are, if you're, let me take a quick poll. Who knows what terpenes are? Raise your hand. Excellent. Okay, it's okay if you don't know what terpenes are. That's why you're here, and we appreciate you coming. So looks like more than half of you guys know what terpenes are, which is great. So the exhibition is working. So that's awesome. There's a ton of great information if you want to learn more about terpenes. I encourage you to take a look at the SC Labs panel there, at the Cananigma panel. When you first walk in, there's some great information there. We're just going to do a pretty high-level overview of what terpenes are, specific to cannabis and hemp. Terpenes are produced in the cannabis plant and the hemp plant. There's a whole bunch of terpenes. They are the primary constituents of essential oils. They're responsible for the flavor and aroma of cannabis and hemp. I'm not going to get into cannabis and hemp and the difference between them. Hemp is a legal term for the cannabis plant. Hemp is defined as less than 0.3% THC by mass, but it is still the cannabis plant. And this cannabis plant produces terpenes, as does hemp. And it gives us the wonderful smells, aromas, flavor, and efficacy that we're used to in the cannabis and hemp sensory and pharmacokinetic experience. So these are some of the terpenes found in cannabis, and the Expo competition is broken down into these categories of dominant and co-dominant terpenes, and we can go into that a little bit later, but here's an example of some of them. Myrcene, found in hops. The hops plant and cannabis are related to each other, so they have similar synthase for production of these compounds called terpenes. Myrcene, again, is found in mangoes, hops, bay laurel, thyme, lemongrass, basil. So it has these characteristics that you're used to from these other plants, and they're produced in the cannabis plant as well, and they have the same sensory experience in that respect. They can have sedating and relaxing efficacy, so the effects of them can make you sleepy, can make you relaxed. There's an old wives' tale about eating a mango and smoking a joint and how that can help enhance your high. What you're really doing is you're adding a lot of terpenes to the experience. And the terpenes can help to give you a little terpo boost. So that's what we like to call that. That's myrcene. Alpha pinene up next, produced in conifers, pine trees, pinene, again, so in reference to that particular mode of production in the plant. Anti-inflammatory, bronchodilator is one that I really like to point out to people. So when you inhale these terpenes, they're bioavailable. They've been shown, the science is there, they've been shown and validated to open up your lungs and be a bronchodilator. There's a custom that Dr. Russo talks about a lot. It's a Japanese custom. I'm not going to attempt the name because I'm totally going to butcher it, but it's a custom of walking through a pine forest. And this act of, the Japanese have found that walking through a pine forest has this like uplifting experience to it. And that's because of the terpenes, they think. So kind of anecdotally, they've figured out that, they call it forest bathing, that's the translation. And this forest bathing is literally just walking through a sea of terpenes floating around, rich in alpha pinene. And what that does is it opens up your lungs. It helps you absorb oxygen, which gives you this clarity of mind. So that's what alpha pinene is really good for. If you want to get a little bit of a, uplift, have a clear mind. It's also found in pine sol. It's why they put it in cleaning products along with limonene. The other one, if you flip a cleaning product around, look at the ingredients. You'll see that these terpenes are in there. Alpha-pinene, limonene are some of the top ingredients in there because they have all of these wonderful effects and benefits. Moving on to limonene. It has this antifungal, antibacterial effect. That's why they use it in pine sol, right? Because it can clean surfaces and it can kill the germs. And that's that terpene limonene that's doing that. It's also great at cutting cannabis oil. So if you're in the manufacturing space, you mix a little bit of dilution of limonene into your ethanol and your cleaning solution is magical. So try that next time you're in the lab. So limonene is also found in the rind of citrus fruit, hence limonene. It tastes like it sounds, citrusy, lemony. It can be tart. So just keep that in mind. And then as far as the strains that it's found in, Super Lemon Haze, Lemon Skunk, Jack, Durban Poison, those are going to be limonene dominant strains. I don't know who the winner of this year's limonene category was. Last year it was Essentia, I believe, with the Buddha's hand. But this year, yeah, sorry, we should know that, but shout out, go look at there and tell me who it is. Oh, Marty. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, heck yeah. Yeah, so I mean, just the quality of the products and the flowers that are being produced here in California are phenomenal, and that we see that in the analytics, which is also really cool for a guy like myself. Self-proclaimed terp nerd, here we go. Okay, so where do terpenes come from? They're produced in the glandular trichomes, and these are the different kinds of trichomes. There's 3 kinds here, sessile, bulbous, and stalked. Primarily, the stalked ones are going to have a higher concentration of terpenes. And these trichomes exist on the plant for a whole number of reasons. And what happens is they're little bubbles full of all these compounds in there, liquefied compounds. And when you touch them, they pop. And they release all of these compounds onto the flower, into the air. And they're there to either attract or detract predators. Also for such as mold pressure and that sort of thing. If the plants are getting infested with pests, spider mites, that sort of thing, these trichomes will kind of swell up with various terpenes depending on what the environmental pressure is. And then when they get rubbed up against, such as by a spider mite or something, or a spider or a human, they pop, and then they release the terpenes in all these compounds. And then these terpenes can get to work with these antifungal properties, these aromatic properties to attract humans. I mean, we all love the smell of terpenes. So I really think that as far as a sensory profile, the cannabis plant is uber rich in it. From a molecular perspective, if you compare it to wine, if you compare it to coffee, if you compare it to beer, it has much more compounds in it. There's over 400 non-active compounds in cannabis. When I say non-active, I mean non-cannabinoid compounds. That's a lot. You compare that to wine with 1 active compound and maybe 50 other non-active compounds in there. You compare that to coffee with about 100 to 200 active compounds in there. Cannabis is twice that. So it is this factory of flavor, aroma, and efficacy. And I believe it's because it's been selectively bred that way for millennia. Thousands of years we've been working with this plant. And this is where they're produced. They're also produced in the roots as well, terpenes. Triterpenes have been found in the roots. So why terpenes? This one I'm going to have to wing. There's so much there's so much why to terpenes for me. Number 1, flavor. If you're smoking weed and there's no terps in it, it's not going to taste very good. It's going to taste like hay. So the terpenes are the primary driver to the flavor experience of cannabis. And they also add effect. So let's talk a little bit about the cannabis efficacy experience. I like to describe it as a bicycle. I wish I had a bicycle up here, but you guys can imagine what a bicycle looks like. The rear wheel is where all the propulsion is coming from. That's the cannabinoids. That's THC. That's CBD. That's the primary driver of the force of your effects. The front wheel of that bicycle is the terpenes. And there's other compounds, but the terpenes are right now where science is looking to add that, what's called the entourage effect, or the synergistic effects. That's steering your efficacy experience. So that's where you're getting your ish, your indica sativa hybrid experiences from the terpenes. Also from the cannabinoids, but the terpenes are really going to give you that effect of being couch locked, or being high, happy, energetic, or being balanced. I'm going to focus on terpenes, but there's a wide array of cannabinoid compounds, as we know, that also are responsible for that. But terpenes are really important as well. And as a former manufacturer, former lab extractor, vape oil for me is a big why. The terpenes add, again, all of this efficacy and flavor to the vape oil product. Without terpenes, vape oil, you wouldn't want to smoke it. You know, it wouldn't taste like anything. So it gives you, again, that strain specificity, that strain effect, that nuance of uplifting effects, of flavor, again, smell. And they also cut, I'm the VP Science at AVD, and we manufacture vape hardware. One of the things that I'm looking at now is how terpenes affect the rheology of cannabis oil. And rheology is viscosity. So it's the shear rate. It's how the oil moves under stress. And that's really important in a vape cartridge because the cores need to resaturate. Or else they dry out and they don't taste very good, and they produce all of these compounds that you don't want to be inhaling. So it's really important to understand the rheology of the cannabis oil, which is absolutely responsible with terpenes. And that's why I like vape oil. Edibles, there's more and more now for terpenes making it through the bloodstream after you eat them and being bioavailable, especially in like a gummy matrix, I would say. Really an effective matrix to protect the terpenes, which are very delicate compounds, highly reactive compounds, especially in their like lighter forms. The monoterpenes are the light, fresh plant aromatics. So if you're looking for like live resin gummies and that sort of thing, be very careful with that, because these compounds that make live resin what it is, these monoterpenes, are very volatile. But that said, gummies are, again, a really nice matrix to trap them in there, keep them stable, and then once you ingest them, they protect from the gut, that acidic environment in the gut, and then they can pass through to your bloodstream and make you feel nice and good, warm and tingly from the inside out. Beverages. We love terpenes in beverages because just like cocktail and mixology, right, like adding a sprig of rosemary, adding a twist of citrus, it's the same thing with these cannabis-derived terpenes. They add that top note. They add that flavor again to the whole experience. Tinctures, same thing, another liquid preparation. Infused joints, you know, like I go back and forth on infused joints. I like flower, especially really good flower. I just want to smoke just really good flower. But you're seeing more and more in infused joints for a number of reasons, but terps are a great way to infuse, again, and then if you can use the terps to cut the oil and make it more paintable. So the viscosity helps there. Dabbables, concentrates, tons of application there. And then topicals. Terpenes and topicals have been shown to open up the skin and help with the delivery of those cannabinoids. So I talked about it a little bit earlier, chemometric analysis and how the competition is set up. SC Labs did a really cool study. I think their N size was over 70,000 samples. And what they did was they aggregated them and looked at how these terpenes from the test that they ran, where they stacked up and how they kind of grouped together. And I wish I had the raw data to show you, but it's pretty powerful. What they found was that now they're on 7, but I think this was last year, a couple of years ago, 6 primary terpenes that popped up in California commercial cannabis. Again, N size 70,000 plus. It's a lot of data, people. Pinene, limonene, caryophyllene, myrcene, ocimene, and terpinolene were the top. What's interesting here is that ocimene was less than 2% of the population, where myrcene and caryophyllene were the lion's share, I believe. Myrcene, caryophyllene, and limonene were the top 3. But But that said, as I mentioned earlier, there's hundreds of terpenes found in cannabis. This is what California likes in their flavor profile. That's what that means. So you could go to another market in Michigan or something, and there might be a different kind of aggregate of these. So this is what an individual phytofacts report looks like. It is what's called chemometric analysis, basically looking at cannabinoids and terpenes. And then what you're seeing here on the top is the ratio of cannabinoids, THCA to CBG, CBD to THC, THCV to CBD, you name it. There's some sort of ratio that's reported there. And then these are radar scatter plots. On the left, you have on the right, you have your aroma. And then on the right, you have the efficacy. So it's a good way to kind of tease out what the strain effect and flavor profile is and what really reacts with your body, what the nose knows, what draws you to your particular strain. You would see that in the analysis. And then when you look at your flower, you're shopping for a joint or whatever cannabis product you like, you can look for these specific traits and characteristics and have a reliable efficacy flavor experience. And then on the bottom is the array of the various individual terpenes as they're quantified and characterized there. So you can see here in this particular chemovar, limonene is the top terpene, caryophyllene, and then linalool is the third. What's interesting about linalool is that it's also produced in lavender, and it has this relaxing efficacy experience to it. And it's conveniently purple on this chart, which is awesome. Okay, I'm going to open it up for Q&A. Thank you so much for joining me today and for coming to the fair. That's my Instagram, @MarlonRando. That's my email. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. I love to talk Terpy. I'm going to be doing a little sensory here on terpenes. If you guys haven't smelled terpenes yet, cannabis-derived terpenes, come on up. We'll give you a whiff. It's really nice. Quick show of hands. Has anybody... Let me rephrase this. How many of you have been in a cannabis garden and been around live cannabis plants? Yeah, okay, so you guys know what fresh cannabis smells like. If you haven't, come up and smell fresh cannabis. It's very different than what you're used to in a bag or in a jar, which is dried and cured, which is also a wonderful experience. But the fresh cannabis, again, this monoterpene-rich experience is quite novel if you've never experienced it before.
I have a question. Earlier, you said terpenes affect the viscosity of the oil, and it stops it from drying down. When it dries down, it turns into compounds you don't want. What compounds does cannabis oil break into? Just CBD, VV? Or, I mean,
I'm happy to dive into that.
Yeah.
It's a great question. So in our research, what we're looking for when I say kind of the degradant compounds, there's a number of ways we can approach that question. I think what you're alluding to might be like the conversion into CBN. That's one of the known reaction pathways to THC or CBD for that matter. They all start out up top as CBG and in their acidic form CBGA, and then they get decarboxylated. They have further reactions and synthase throughout the plant and then also out of the plant. And then they all kind of end up further on down the line through oxidation, through heat, through various other reactionary reactions into CBN. Typically is kind of the last part of the chain. CBN is really stable, doesn't oxidize very easily. It has about a quarter the efficacy of THC, so it's not a very good agonist of the CB1 receptor. That's why it kind of makes you sleepy. It's known as a sleepy cannabinoid because it, again, has like a quarter of the efficacy as THC. It doesn't have the binding affinity that THC has. Now, as far as terpenes and rheology and cannabis oil and viscosity goes, what we're looking for there in the aerosol chemistry is what are called HPHCs, hazardous and potentially harmful compounds. And this is a list of over 200 compounds put out by the FDA. and it's basically what the FDA puts the e-cigarette manufacturers through. So you have to when you apply for to produce an e-cigarette product, a vapor product, which is what is going to happen to us in cannabis. They make you run through this process, and you have to demonstrate that you understand and that you can validate your aerosol chemistry. And that's exactly what we're looking at through that lens. And there's those compounds are compounds like formaldehyde, right? Acrolein. These things you don't want to be inhaling. Right. And they happen because of overheating, basically. The hot coil is there's just so much energy in that, and the chemistry is all about energy. There's so much energy in there that it breaks apart these compounds and it makes them turn into nasty compounds.
I've been hurt by a vape before.
Yeah. Right. So it's really important that you have temperature control and that you have, obviously high quality product and oil, and then also a high quality device that can deliver that oil safely. And that's the side that I'm on now. And then what we've seen in our analysis is that as you vape down through that cart, the terpenes have a lower boiling point than the cannabinoids, so they volatilize first. So as you hit that vape pen over and over and over again, the terpenes start to evacuate and liberate from the oil, and then what that does is it concentrates the cannabinoids towards the end. So you get less terps, higher potency at the end. That can all be managed and optimized through your device. But that said, again, the terpenes have a lower boiling point than the cannabinoids, so eventually they will start to liberate, and then you're left with more highly potent, concentrated cannabis oil at the end there. The most important thing there is that you make sure that wick is nice and saturated all the time, because that's going to protect you from having that dry coil and those burnt hits, and then also from these HPHC compounds. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
I think you should talk about cannabis-derived terpenes and botanical-derived terpenes.
Absolutely.
The difference of them. Because
don't get me going on that. Yeah, no. So botanically derived terpenes, BDTs, are derived from fruit or derived from flowers. It's much more economical to derive some of these compounds in other plants if you're looking for just concentrated extracts. So like the limonene that we get is derived from like waste fruit, and then it's like the rejects and the lime peels and the lemon peels from orange juicing and all of that. They'll take that, send it to in the flavor industry, they call it the extraction side of the flavor industry. They'll take that to an extractor. They will steam distill that out, and then they'll capture the limonene out of it, and then that's your pure botanical derived limonene. These products are used in the cannabis industry to formulate in vape pens and try to mimic, mirror, or create just a flavor and sensory experience. Whether it's trying to be like cannabis or not, that depends on the formulator, depends on the brand and all of that. But these terpenes are absolutely used in the cannabis industry in vape pens, and those are botanically derived terpenes, again, BDT, and they're not produced in the cannabis plant. In that particular section of the industry, there's a clear distinction between that and what are called cannabis-derived terpenes, or CDTs is what we like to call them. And those are going to be natively produced in the cannabis plant, and then the same kind of either distillation process or extraction process to turn them into a terpene product that can then be formulated back into a vape pen. And those have, again, they're native to the cannabis flower. They can have the closest, if not identical, flavor and efficacy profile to that flower that it was extracted from.
Is there any other plant that has as many terpenes?
Terpenes is cannabis? That's a great question, James. I'm biased, but I don't think so. I would love to talk to somebody that has a counter point there.
I think we're still finding new ones all the time.
Yeah,
So
that's true. But we've been working with this plant for so long, and it is so optimized for what we need, and we love the smells, and that's I'd be hard pressed to find something that produces more terpene compounds than cannabis. Yeah, maybe in diversity and array, but quantity, I'm sure. Because like on the industrial side, right? Like. I would venture to guess that the concentration of limonene by mass in a lemon peel is higher than maybe the concentration of terpenes by mass, but it's not going to have the diversity that we have in cannabis. And I think that would hold true. Any other questions? I appreciate you guys. Thank you.